So the Nintendo Switch 2 has been out for a couple days now, and I've been able to have my hands on the console and become acquainted with it, so I figured, why not today go over my first initial thoughts on the Nintendo Switch 2. What I mean by this is I'll mostly be looking specifically at the console itself as well as accessories I have for the console and giving my first impressions on how good, how bad, or in between each of them are. I'm going to be doing separate videos on each of the games that I got my hands on at launch at a later time, so with that in mind, stay tuned for that. But today, again, we're going to be specifically looking at the Switch 2 itself, as well as what it comes with and other accessories. I just thought that this would be kind of a fun video to do, because you know, this is like my first time being here day one for a Nintendo console here on YouTube, and I want to be able to do those first impression kind of videos. That being said, I'm the biggest nub on YouTube, Kickstand, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as that helps me out a ton. We're getting very close to 5,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed this video, subscribe. It'll help me get closer to that goal, as at this point, I think we're just under 500 away. That's kind of crazy. Also, while you're at it, if you want to talk to me and others about all things Nintendo, consider joining the Discord server. The link is down in the description. Now, obviously, I want to start off with the console itself, and honestly, this thing is great. It might be recency bias speaking, because obviously this is the new Nintendo toy, if you even want to call it that, but it just feels really nice to hold. It's a lot bigger than the original Switch is. I can do a side-by-side comparison if I just grab my normal Switch quick. But yeah, as you can see, this is the Switch right here. This is the Switch OLED. It is so much bigger. It doesn't seem like it on camera, but when you're holding them side-by-side, the comparison is absolutely insane. On top of the console itself being bigger, the Joy-Cons are also bigger. As you can see, this is the Switch OLED, or just normal Switch Joy-Con on the right here. And then on the left, I have the Switch 2 Joy-Con, and it is significantly bigger. One of my biggest problems with the original Switch Joy-Con was the size of it being too small, where especially these SL and SR buttons on the top being really small and kind of hard to push. On the Switch 2, that has been fixed, because obviously the Joy-Con's a lot bigger, and then up here we have much larger SL and SR buttons, which are really nice. I still think that the Joy-Con 2 is a little small to hold comfortably for long periods of time on the side, but it is definitely a lot more manageable than with the original one. Moving back to the console now, I gotta say, all the noises on this console are great. When you snap in or just remove the Joy-Con, it makes really satisfying sounds, like just listen. I don't know if my microphone picked up on that, but they make really great sounds. The UI has some really great sounds as well, especially if I go in and click all these tabs here. Like, they all sound really nice. Just everything about this console, like, I love all the, I guess you could say, personality to it, because like the original Switch was lacking some personality. While all the personality isn't here, per se, with this console, I do like the rounded edges. I do like how the like outline around the games that you're hovering over kind of changes colors as it's like rotating around. That's pretty cool. All the sounds, of course, as I mentioned, just so much to love about this console here. And on top of that, it just feels really quality to hold. The screen, even when we compare it to an OLED screen, which looks really great, it still stands on its own as a really good screen. While OLED would have been better, I think that would have made the console way too expensive, probably in the $600 range, because an OLED screen of a size this big would just be insane. But even like side by side with the OLED, just how the screen looks, especially with HDR, it looks great. And on top of that, it's a 120Hz screen, which makes it so that you can play games in 120 FPS in handheld mode. Compare that to this thing being 720 with like 30 FPS, I think, or 30 Hz on the screen. This is a huge upgrade when compared to the original Switch. On top of that, obviously, this thing's a lot more powerful. It's able to play games in 4K and 1080p when in handheld. But because of that, it definitely makes it a lot better than the original Switch, of course. But even then, like, load times for games, like especially like Switch 1 games, when I was playing Breath of the Wild on here for the first time, the load times were insanely fast when compared to the original Switch. Like, you can get into a shrine in a matter of seconds on the Switch 2, whereas on Switch 1, it would take probably a good 20 seconds to get into a shrine. So as you could guess, this is basically just a Switch, but a whole lot better. And honestly, that's all I really wanted the Switch 2 to be. Like I said, I also wanted to talk about the other things that I got alongside the console. And obviously, with the console, we also have the dock. And honestly, I really like the design of the dock. I really like how like the edges are rounded up here. It makes it look a lot more sleek. You're able to put in and take out the console a lot easier. And I do like that on the inside here, it also has that material to protect the screen that the OLED version had. And obviously here on the back, it has the little like back plate that you can take off. And obviously it has the AC adapter, HDMI port, and the LAN port that was added on the Switch OLED dock, which is pretty nice. You're able to connect this directly to Ethernet. And I don't know, it just has a really clean design. Obviously the price tag of, I think, $120 is a bit much for this thing, but it does feel really high quality. But the original one felt kind of cheap, but this one actually feels pretty premium, and I just think that this dock is a huge upgrade over the original dock, for sure. On the topic of upgrades, let's talk about the Pro Controller, and honestly, this is probably one of my favorite controllers I've ever held. This thing feels super quality. I don't know what it is. It might be like the material of it, or like just how the sticks feel and the buttons feel, but this thing feels great. I think that the D-pad's a lot better than it was on the original Switch because it actually kind of feels like a D-pad. Is it actually? I don't know. I haven't taken this apart. But it feels a lot better for sure. Obviously, you know, it has kind of a similar design to the original Pro Controller, which I have up here. But it's not translucent. You're not able to see the innards of the controller here. It's just straight black. And honestly, I think it looks nicer. I really like the gray outlines on the top and in the sticks down here. And then obviously there is the C button, which will take us to Game Chat, which we can talk about in a bit because I have actually experienced Game Chat a little bit and I give my thoughts on that. And then obviously, because there's a headphone jack on the bottom of the controller now, the indicator light of where what player number you are is on the top, just like how it is on the Joy-Cons. And honestly, everything about this controller is great. On the back here, we have the G, L, and GR buttons, which are kind of just mappable buttons back here. Am I going to use them much? Probably not, but they just kind of feel nice to click when you're just you know, messing around on a game, right? And you're just using the sticks. You have a little something to click on the back there, which feels really nice. And yeah, just everything about this controller, it feels great to hold. I think that this might be a recency bias, just like how I'm glazing the Switch 2 as a console. But this controller is just probably one of my favorite controllers ever, and it's going to be hard for Nintendo to top this one if they ever do a Switch 3 with a Pro Controller, which I'm sure they'll do in 20 years from now. No, I completely glossed over these, but the Joy-Cons as well. I've mentioned them briefly when I was comparing the size to the original one, but these Joy-Cons are pretty great. I do like how with the Switch 2, they went with a more kind of modern aesthetic to it, where it was focusing on the darker design, but it also had that Nintendo charm by having the colors of the Joy-Con somewhere displayed on here rather than it just being straight up black. And I think that the insides of the joystick having the red/orange and blue colors is great, as well as the tops here. Again, I already mentioned this before, but the Joy-Cons are a huge improvement over the original Joy-Cons from Switch 1. And on top of that, as you are already aware, you're able to use this as a mouse. And while not many games have used the Joy-Cons as a mouse yet, the only ones I can think of are Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which I'm not a huge fan of, in my opinion. We'll get into that when I make a video on that eventually. As well as I think Fortnite has an update that just released sometime recently for Joy-Con 2 mouse support. But being able to use the Joy-Con as a mouse definitely leaves the door open for a bunch of possibilities of just great uses of it. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond has some great uses for it, I think, where you're able to switch between just your normal controls and then instantly turn into the mouse controls to be able to aim and stuff like that. I'm excited to see what they do with this feature later on in the console. Obviously, since the console was early on, there's not a lot of uses for it, but I definitely feel like that there's a lot they could do with this, and I'm super excited to see what they do. But yeah, the Joy-Cons as well, they just feel a lot better than the original ones. It might just be that they feel like new Joy-Cons, and I haven't used them much yet, so they have that new Joy-Con feeling, but they feel great. They feel a lot more premium than the original ones, which, again, just like the dock, the plastic on the original Joy-Cons kind of feel cheap. But here, they feel better quality, and I think that's just part of the package with Switch 2. Everything just feels a lot better. And as I've already mentioned as well, these magnetically attach to the console, and they are really satisfying to snap in and detach. And obviously, you detach and attach them with the little, release button back here, which is a nice little trigger, which is also kind of fun to push if you're just messing around with the console. And then one more thing about the console, I gotta say, I like this this little kickstand here. Obviously, the original Switch had a pretty bad kickstand. The OLED improved on it, but this one I think is great. I like the U-shape. It definitely makes it a little bit cleaner, and just where the SD card is on this one when compared to the OLED, because you have to really dig into the little wedge that it's in on the OLED, whereas here it's pretty easy to insert and release the SD card here, which is pretty nice. And yeah, the back here also looks pretty clean as well with the Switch 2 logo. Just yeah, everything as I've mentioned about this console is great. I'm in love with this console already. I think it's one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I just got it. But now that I've talked about the console a good bit now, let's move on to some more of the accessories. Obviously, I've already talked about the Pro Controller, so we don't have to talk about that, but let's talk about the JoyCon Strap. This thing is fine. I mean, it's a JoyCon Strap. It's nothing too crazy. I still struggle to put this on. It's not hard. I think I'm just dumb, but obviously to release it, you just click the button there, and all you really gotta do is just kind of slide it in back here, and then just push it down. Yeah, that's how you attach this. Obviously, this can be used if you want to be more careful with the Joy-Con and not just have it directly on the floor. You could use this to kind of protect it a bit more. And obviously, it has the little strap here so that if you're using it for motion controls or whatever, you don't throw your console or throw your controller, not your console. I'd hope you're not throwing your console, but so that you don't throw your controller. And yeah, I mean, it is just a Joy-Con strap. It's nothing too crazy. It works for what it needs to do. The JoyCon Grip is next, and obviously just like how the console lets you attach the Joy-Cons to it, you can attach your Joy-Cons to the grip, which, I mean, if it's a grip for the Joy-Cons, I'd hope that you would be allowed to. And just like the original one, I feel like that this is kind of cheap plastic feeling. I mean, the JoyCon grips are never going to be something too crazy. They had to make it cheap because they don't want to spend too much money on making these things, but it's fine for what it does. I mean, it feels good to hold the Joy-Cons like this. It's a lot better than on the original, but I would just much rather use the Pro Controller if I have that option, but this isn't bad if you don't have a Pro Controller. Obviously, the Pro Controller would be the way to go, but if you're a person that just picked up the console and you just need a way to play your games, using the JoyCon Grip is great. It does its job, and it still feels pretty good to hold this. I just prefer the Pro Controller, but that's just me. And since I like wasting my money, of course I bought myself the charging grip. Am I going to use this much? Probably not, but I wanted to give this thing a chance anyways. The only differences really about this is obviously you're able to charge with the USB-C up there, and it has a more translucent background, and it just feels nicer in general. I feel like this translucent plastic just feels a bit better because you're spending extra money. And the big thing that this adds, obviously, on top of the chargeability of it, is the GL and GR buttons that were present on the Pro Controller. So if you want mappable buttons for your Joy-Cons, this is the thing to get. I think that at the end of the day, if you're playing your Switch 2 so much to the point that you had to worry about your Joy-Cons dying, go touch grass, because they have a life of about 20 hours, I believe, if it's anything like the normal Switch. So I really don't see why your Joy-Cons will die on you, unless you're one of those weirdos that don't put it back on the console. But again, just like the other grip, you're able to attach your Joy-Cons here. They fit just right in there. And I think that, like, just the feeling of this is a bit better, but it does make this a necessity to pick up. Like, out of all the accessories I have, this is probably the one that you don't need the most. On the topic of accessories you don't need, we have the steering wheels. We have the JoyCon 2 steering wheels. Just like the Wii wheel and Switch 2 wheel, these are literally just wheels for your Joy-Con. The steering wheels for your Joy-Con, and they just kind of fit right in there. Like, we have the left one right here. We could just, like, stick it in there like that. It sure is a steering wheel. I'm not a fan of motion controls with Mario Kart, so I just thought that this thing would be kind of a novelty to get, you know, just to be able to give everything a fair shot. Mario Kart World's motion controls are just like how they are in every other game. They're fine. It'll take some time to get used to, but if you're used to them, they're fine, whatever. And I mean, it's nice that we have this option to have the Joy-Cons in the wheel, but like at the same time, I'm not gonna really use this. It was just, again, kind of a novelty purchase. They are $25, so they're not super crazy expensive, but like at the end of the day, that'd be spending $25 on plastic. So do with that what you will. But like, they feel quality enough though. Like, for $25, you got some decent quality plastic, but again, it's just plastic. There's not much else to say. You know, I'll be honest, I almost completely forgot to mention this in the video until I went to go grab stuff from my desk, but we also have the Nintendo Switch 2 camera. What's great about this is that you're able to like twist the little part up here, you're able to twist that, and you're able to get like a little privacy like thing there that goes in front of the camera. But I gotta say that this thing looks a lot smaller, or it is just a lot smaller than I thought it was. I don't know why, but I thought that this thing was gonna be a bit bigger and like a little bit thicker, but like this thing is kind of tiny actually. It's actually kind of cute how tiny it is. You're able to like adjust, you're not able to like adjust like angle and stuff, but you're able to like adjust up and down slightly how much that this thing moves around. So that's kind of nice, I guess, but it is just a USB camera for the Switch 2. It does its job. I mean, it works. I just feel like that it kind of shows things a little dark. That could just be because of my lighting here. It does show things a little dark here though. It does kind of look like the Pixar lamp, and it has a neat enough design. Like, I mean, it's a camera. There's not much just to really say about it, but if you really are going to use game chat and like really want to use a camera, I think that a third-party camera would work just fine. I mean, obviously this is 1080p, whereas other cameras may not be 1080p, but I think that they'll work fine enough. But if you really want to spend the $55 on the official Switch 2 camera, I mean, that's an option. And then the last thing that I really have to talk about accessory-wise is, of course, the Switch 2 carrying case. Unfortunately, they didn't have the all-in-one case. That was the one I kind of wanted to go for. If I really want it, I can get later on. But here we just have the basic carrying case. And, I mean, it sure is a carrying case. It sure is overpriced for being a carrying case because, you know, the official Nintendo ones are always expensive. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing too crazy. You can put your Switch 2 in there. And then you have a little spot for games. That's all there really is with this. I mean, it feels quality enough. I like the material that they use on the outside here. The inside's nice and soft so that your console doesn't get scratched or anything while it's in there. But, like, it's a carrying case. There's not really anything to say about it, but, I mean, I have the official one. I spent $40 on it. I would just recommend if you do get a carrying case, go for a third party because they are a lot cheaper. Wait, before we finish this video off, this is Chris from the future here. I completely forgot to talk about the GameCube Controller, so let's talk about the GameCube Controller. Obviously, with the Switch 2, we have Nintendo Switch Online for GameCube games, and honestly, that's a really great thing. But the controller itself is honestly also really great. I mean, it feels just like a normal GameCube controller, except for obviously it's wireless, which is really nice, so you're able to take this from a further distance from the console. You're not strapped to the console, basically. And it also has analog triggers, which we have not seen on a Nintendo controller since the GameCube. So, you know what? This automatically makes this a great controller. Obviously, the button layout's nice. The buttons feel nice to click. With the Switch 2 version, we have a C button up here. We also have the capture and home menu button. The one weird thing about this controller, though, is the fact that the ZL button up here literally is just a tiny little button, whereas the ZR button over here is just a normal, like, shoulder button. I don't know why they didn't just go in and make this, like, a normal shoulder button as well. I guess it doesn't fit with the GameCube controller because it didn't have this button over here. But, like, you know, with this version, they totally could have added it, but I just think that that's kind of funny. But obviously, we already know that the GameCube controller is great. I'm glad that they brought it back and that we now have a wireless, and it also has gyro, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the GameCube controller. Let's actually end the video off now. But there you go. I basically brought everything that's available for Switch 2 outside of just one of the cases. But you don't need two cases, but that's everything that was available for Switch 2, at least accessory and console-wise, at the launch of the console, so that you know how to go in and spend the $1,000 that this would cost you. But yeah, first impressions on the Switch 2, honestly, I'm really loving the console so far. It's probably like one of my favorite consoles ever. Like, the Switch was one of my favorite consoles of all time, and the fact that it's just a better Switch obviously makes it so that this is top-notch to me. But with that in mind, if you also have your hands on Switch 2 at launch like I do and have been able to play it a little bit, what do you think of the console? Do you like it so far? What are your nitpicks? What are your critiques on the console? And what do you like about it? I'm really interested to hear what other people think about the console. I know that this is probably one of the most controversial consoles of all time, but I'm really loving it so far. I'm excited to see where this console goes in the future, and I really hope that you'll join me along on the journey of going through this generation for Nintendo. With that being said though, that's all I have for this video, but if you want to see another video by me, I have a video on screen now where I vlog my experience of going to the midnight launch of this console, and honestly, it was such a fun time. Go check that video out. With that being said though, I'm the big snub on YouTube, Kickstand signing off, and as always, goodbye, Nub Nation.